Hey, I'm Soro. Today I am going to tell you why are you right-handed or left-handed. It seems like the kind of thing we should have figured out by now. We haven't. What we do know is pretty weird. Your dominant hand was chosen before you ever took your first breath. About 1 in 10 people are left-handed. That number has stayed almost unchanged for at least 500,000 years. No human population has ever been mostly left-handed. And no other animal, not even chimpanzees, shows the same strong preference for one side that humans do. Doctors can often tell whether a baby will be right-handed or left-handed before birth. They watch ultrasounds and see which hand the fetus brings to its mouth more often. Once that preference appears, it almost never changes. The 500,000-year estimate comes from bones. A dominant arm ends up slightly longer, denser, and stronger after years of doing most of the work. When archaeologists examine ancient skeletons, around 10% show signs of left-handed use. The same percentage we see today. Something deep in the brain has been pushing most humans toward one side for a very long time. There is a clue hidden in a cave in Croatia. Scientists studied the teeth of a Neanderthal who died around 130,000 years ago. The front teeth carried tiny diagonal scratches. The person had been preparing animal hides for clothing. They held the hide in their teeth. One hand pulled it tight. The other scraped it with a sharp stone tool. Every so often, the tool slipped and nicked the teeth. Those scratches tell a story. The angle of the marks reveals which hand held the tool. Again and again, the answer is the same: the right hand. Researchers see the same pattern throughout the fossil record. Even a Homo habilis specimen nearly 2 million years old shows similar evidence. Long before farming, before language, before the earliest art we have discovered, our ancestors were already favoring the right side. Ancient cave paintings tell the same story. Across Europe, Indonesia, and Argentina, people pressed a hand against rock and blew pigment around it, leaving an outline behind. Most of those outlines are left hands. That means the hand holding the pigment tube was usually the right. This goes way back, and it was never really your decision. You didn't choose your dominant hand the way you chose your favorite color. Identical twins can share the exact same DNA and still end up with different dominant hands. Roughly 1 in 4 identical twin pairs are like this. Genes matter. They just aren't the whole answer. If both parents are right-handed, your chance of being left-handed is about 10%. If one parent is left-handed, it rises to around 17%. If both parents are left-handed, it reaches roughly 26%. There's also a small difference between men and women. Men are slightly more likely to be left-handed. Nobody is completely sure why. The leading idea today is that there isn't a single left-handed gene. Instead, there are many tiny genetic influences, plus something researchers call the right shift. Here's the basic idea. Your brain is cross-wired. The left hemisphere controls the right side of the body. The right hemisphere controls the left. Among right-handed people, about 99% have language centered in the left hemisphere, particularly in a region called Broca's area. The same side that controls the dominant hand also controls speech. There's another area nearby called BA44. It becomes active when people make and use tools. Speech, tool use, hand control, all clustered together on the same side. That's what the right shift tendency does. If you inherit it, language and hand dominance both settle into the left hemisphere, making you right-handed. Without it, the brain doesn't receive a strong instruction. The system ends up choosing a side more or less randomly. So left-handedness isn't really caused by a special left-handed gene. It's what happens when the push toward right-handedness isn't there. There may be an even older explanation for why this happened. Walking, specifically walking on 2 legs. Kangaroos do it too. As far as we know, they are the only other mammals with a species-wide preference for one side. Interestingly, most kangaroos favor the left. That suggests something about standing upright and freeing the hands may force the brain to specialize, no matter which species is doing it. That leads to an obvious question. If right-handedness became the default, why didn't left-handedness disappear? Baseball gives us a clue. Among the greatest hitters in Major League history, nearly half bat left-handed. Remember, left-handers make up only about 10% of the population. The same pattern appears in boxing, fencing, tennis, cricket, and mixed martial arts. A 2019 study looked at thousands of professional combat sport matches. Left-handed fighters won significantly more often than right-handed opponents. Not because they hit harder, because they're uncommon. Most people spend their lives practicing against right-handed opponents. Their reflexes adapt to right-handed movements. The punches come from familiar angles. The stance looks familiar. Then a left-handed opponent steps in and everything is reversed. A fraction of a second disappears. In a fight, that's enough. The advantage comes from rarity. If everyone were left-handed, the advantage would vanish. If left-handers became too rare, genetic variation would push the number upward again. The result is a balance, around 10%, generation after generation. But fighting isn't most of life. Most of life involves cooperation, shared tools, shared equipment, learning by copying other people. And almost all of those systems are designed around the majority. Scissors, can openers, school desks, guitars, even the way cards are dealt. Look at golf. Only about 4% of top golfers are left-handed. Golf isn't a direct contest against another person's reflexes. The surprise factor doesn't matter. What matters is a world built around right-handed clubs, right-handed instruction, and right-handed coaching. So left-handedness helps in some situations and hurts in others. Competition rewards it. Cooperation often penalizes it. The modern 10% sits right in the middle of those pressures. There's one more thing. Left-handed brains are wired a little differently. In most people, tasks are divided pretty strictly. Language lives mostly on the left. Face recognition, spatial awareness, and mental imagery lean heavily toward the right. The boundaries are clear. Left-handers tend to blur those boundaries. Functions that stay on one side in right-handed people are often spread across both hemispheres. Researchers have found a few effects linked to this. When speech centers are damaged, left-handers often recover language more quickly because the opposite hemisphere can help. Communication between the two halves of the brain also appears slightly faster. Tasks that require combining information from different regions sometimes show a small advantage too. Psychologist Chris McManus spent much of his career studying handedness. His description is simple. Left-handed brains are a bit less strict. The work is spread around more. It's not a superpower. Most left-handers are completely average. But the wiring really is different. What's interesting is how language has treated that difference. The Latin word for left is sinister. We still use the word today to mean something threatening or evil. In French, gauche means left. It also means awkward or clumsy. English isn't much kinder. The right hand is the skillful hand, and being right means being correct. For centuries, left-handed children were forced to switch. Teachers tied down left hands. Parents knocked pens away. Schools across Europe and the Americas treated left-handedness as a problem to be fixed. In some places that continued into the 1960s, it rarely worked. The brain had already made its choice, and it wasn't interested in negotiating. You never really decided which hand would be yours. That decision happened before you entered the world. It followed a pattern older than civilization, older than writing, older than language itself. The hand you write with, throw with, wave with. That preference reaches back hundreds of thousands of years. And the small group of people who use the other hand aren't mistakes in the system. They're part of the reason the system still works. They're why the rest of us occasionally have to deal with a punch we never saw coming.